Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back. Good afternoon. It's good to be back here in our third class in GMMUN School Batch 9. And the topic for today will be about simulation, or specifically the technical simulation of how proceedings in MUN are conducted. So for our today's class, we will use not a presentation, but instead we will use a spreadsheet, a Microsoft Excel file that will display all the technical information that you need to know about the simulation of MUN. So it's going to be quite complicated, more complicated than the previous material. So I hope you guys can keep up with that. But do not worry, because I will guide you from the very first start. And from the technical simulation, I hope that after the class, you guys will understand about the exact rules and regulations in every session of MUN. Because if we recall back to our flow, to the flow of MUN, if you still remember, the first one is roll call. The second one is general speakers list. The third one is moderated caucus. The fourth one is unmoderated caucus. And the last one is voting resolution. Now, the simulation will be displaying all the information, technical information related to each session or each flow of the MUN. So whenever you feel like you're not sure which rules are applied to each session, feel free to ask me a question. Okay, feel free to send me a question through the Zoom chat box, or feel free to unmute your mic and directly cut me during my talk and ask me the question that you wish to ask. Because remember that in our school, MUN school, we are not encouraging a school type kind of education, no, but we're trying to encourage an interactive discussion between the mentor, which is me, and also the mentees, which are all of you. So whenever you feel like you don't know about something, I really encourage for you to ask. And whenever you feel you don't, understand fully the presentation that is being presented, it's again better for you to ask instead of just, waiting for the class to end. Okay, I will start sharing my screen for the simulation part. So, okay, so this is the, oh wait. So this is the Excel sheets, the spreadsheets for the technical simulation of MUN. So again, if we recall back, it starts from roll call. MUN start from roll call, continues with the general speakers list, and then we will have moderated caucus and unmoderated caucus afterwards. The last one will be the voting resolution part. Now, in MUN, as we know, it starts with roll call. The roll call function, function of the roll call is to know how many delegates are present and how many delegates are present at voting. We have touched a little bit about that during our first class, the difference between present and voting. I will try to explain again in case one of you perhaps might need to, better understand about the term. But basically what we need to know is that we have to know the total number of the delegates first in order for us to understand all the rules and the regulations. For example, if the council is United Nations General Assembly, which is this one, and let's say there are 30 delegates who are participating as a delegate, as a representative of a country. So I will put 30 here. Now, let's say the composition of the 30 number consists of, let's say, 20 delegates present and 10 delegates present and voting. Now, if you see the combination, the accumulation of both delegates who are present and delegates who are present and voting are totaled in the number of 30. So whenever we refer to the total delegates, it means the present delegates plus the present and voting delegates. Okay, that's the accumulation number of the total delegates. Why do we need to know each composition? Why do we need to know the exact calculation for present and the exact calculation for present and voting? This will affect the way resolutions are voted. This will affect the way motions are decided. So it is very important for us to know and understand about the difference between the calculation for present and the calculation for present and voting. Okay, now keep in mind, we have 30 delegates in total, which consists of 20 delegates present and 10 delegates present and voting. Okay, now as we have understood earlier in our previous classes, there are motions to be proposed, right? We have to propose a motion in order for a motion to be discussed. Once a motion is discussed, once a motion is decided, then the chair will decide the delegates who will discuss on that motion. So for example, if I'm the delegate of Indonesia, for example, I am proposing a motion about vaccination, right? Let's talk about vaccination of COVID. The vote for us to decide for that motion to pass, we have to reach a majority vote, right? For my motion, for Indonesia's motion to pass, we have to reach a majority vote. Now, what's a majority vote? If you take a look here at the one colored in yellow, it says that it's 50% plus one, right? So basically it means we have to calculate the total number, right? Which is 30, just this one. Divide it into two, and then plus one. In this case, 30 divided by 50% or divided by 2 will result into 15, right? And 15 plus 1 is 16. Okay, the same goes with any kind of total number. If the total number is 40, for example, then the majority vote will be 50% plus 1, which is 21, right? If for example, if the total is 20, for example, the total is 50, then the majority vote will be 26, which is 25, the half of 50 plus 1. Okay, I will say that is easy to understand for now, right? So just keep in mind that for us to know the majority vote, we have to choose the total number and then calculate it using the majority vote calculation. Okay, so that's majority vote. When do we use majority vote? So majority vote will be used when it comes to deciding motions. So when we want to decide motions, right, we have to use majority vote. And in majority votes, everyone needs to vote. So you cannot abstain on this one, right? We understand in present that in earlier classes, the present means that you can choose either yes, either no, or either abstain, right? But when you choose to be present and voting, it means that you will be voting. Either you are voting yes or you're voting no. Either way, you are voting. You are not choosing to abstain. Okay, so when it comes to president voting, the only option is yes or no. Okay, but for the special case in majority vote cases, which is when we are to decide motion, we cannot abstain even when we chose to be present earlier. So when you chose to be present earlier in the roll call session, when it comes to deciding motions, you need to choose. So when it comes to motion, again, I am repeating this, you have to vote. Either yes or no, it's up to you, but you have to vote, right? So you cannot not vote when it comes to deciding motion, okay? But that's only when it comes to majority vote. When it comes to quorum vote, that will be the case where you can abstain. That's basically the place where you can, say you don't want to side with either party or with either country or with either draft resolution. That's when you can abstain. But remember, you can only do that when you chose to be present earlier. If you accidentally already said that you are present and voting, then you will not be able to be abstained. All right. So that's for quorum. But for now, we will move from quorum first. We will start with majority first. So we already understand that it is used when we want to decide motions, right? And then when you have to vote on that one. So I'm going to make a simple quiz, a simple question where I need all of you guys to answer, which is I'm gonna describe first the question first. So let's say, for example, we have Indonesia, we have Malaysia, and then also we have Singapore. So this is during a moderated caucus, right? This is during a moderated caucus where every country can propose a motion. Every country can file a motion. Every country can, propose an idea for us to discuss a certain motion, right? For example, let's say Indonesia is the one that first proposes. Malaysia is the second one to propose, and Singapore is the third country to propose. So the first one is Indonesia, the one to propose, right? The second one is Malaysia, the third one is Singapore. If you take a look here, when I say proposing first, proposing second, it basically means the line of order, right? The queue list. The chair will ask any country who wishes to propose a motion, right? They'll say any country who wishes to propose a point or motion, or maybe simply they will just ask any points or motions on the floor. So they're asking the floor, which is the total delegates, to either propose a point or a motion. A point is basically a sequence of instruction in MUN session where you can choose to ask a certain parliamentary part of the MUN, or when you want to ask about a certain privilege that you might be receiving and all that. And basically it's just, points asking questions, right? But motion is the substantial part. Guys, again, if you don't understand on this part, please feel free to let me know. Okay, so motion basically means proposing a subtopic to be discussed. But we cannot just talk about any subtopic, right? Since we are participating in a conference, we are participating in a simulation of MUN where every country has the same right to vote. Every country has the same right to discuss. Every country has the same right to propose a motion. So there will be no differentiation whatsoever when it comes to certain country. Anyone can propose a motion. It doesn't matter if you're a big country, if you're a small country, if you're a republic, or if you're a kingdom, if you're a federal country. It doesn't matter as long as you are a recognized, fully independent, fully sovereign member state of the United Nations, then you will be able to do the same thing exactly like other countries or other member states do inside of the MUN, right? Okay, so back to the simulation. The first one to propose is Indonesia. So when the chair asks anyone who wants to propose a motion, Indonesia is the one that first proposes. And what Indonesia proposes is for us to talk about, let's say, vaccine. Okay, Indonesia proposes to talk about vaccine, but remember, this is only a proposal, right? This is only a proposal. So it's not yet confirmed. It's not yet decided. Indonesia only proposes. After hearing Indonesia's proposal, the chair will ask again. The chair will ask again if anyone wants to propose a motion. For that case, the one that proposes after Indonesia is the country of Malaysia. Malaysia proposes that we have to talk about, let's say, health protocols. And after Malaysia, after hearing Malaysia's proposal and after accepting the Malaysia's proposal to be voted later. Okay, so accepting a proposal means that the chair, feels that the proposal already fulfills the requirement and it's ready to be voted, but it's not yet voted. Okay, so that's the second one. The third one is Singapore. Singapore is the third country, the one that proposes a motion after the delegate of Malaysia. And Singapore proposes for us to talk about lockdown. So we have three motions on the floor: Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. Indonesia with the motion to talk about vaccine, Malaysia to talk about health protocols, and Singapore to talk about lockdown. And remember that this part right here happens during moderated caucus. This is a caucus where anyone needs to propose something to talk about something. In GSL, we don't have any motion proposal sessions. The same goes with unmoderated caucus. We don't have that because in unmoderated caucus, you can talk about anything. You don't have to propose a motion. You don't have to file a motion. You can just talk with anyone you want to, right? And talk about anything related to the topic. That's the difference between moderated and unmoderated. So the name is unmoderated because basically there are no rules when it comes to discussing something. But in moderated caucus, there will be rules. There are rules which you have to follow. In this case, the rules of calculation of how motions are decided. Okay, so if it starts to be complicated, if it starts to complicate, please let me know if you as a question. Okay, I'm just gonna move on and assuming that there's no question since I don't see a question on the Zoom chat box. All right, so let's get back to the simulation question. Indonesia the first one, Malaysia the second one, Singapore the third one. Now, as we have already understood, there are three motions on the floor, right? And there can only be one motion, only one motion, only one motion decided. So when we have three motions on the floor, and the rule says that only one motion is going to be discussed per session, it means that we cannot accept every single motion proposed by Indonesia, Malaysia, or Singapore, which also means that we have to choose one of the three motions that are proposed by the countries that are proposing. So we have to choose either Indonesia or Malaysia or Singapore. Only one out of three. You cannot choose two, you cannot choose three, only one out of three. Okay, now we have understood that we have to choose one, right? But if we take a look at the moderated caucus proposal motion proposal list, we see that the motions have three different topics, right? Which means that we have to decide based on the vote on each motion. So remember when Indonesia proposes, when Malaysia proposes, and when Singapore proposes, there is no voting session yet. The voting session starts when Singapore finishes proposing. So when the third motion is proposed, the chair will then move on to the voting session using the majority vote. If you remember the flow of the debate, you can see that the voting part is actually on the last part after unmoderated caucus. Well, it's true, but the voting session here, it's not to vote on the resolution, but to vote on the motion, just this one. Okay, so bear in mind with me, okay? Bear with me. Now, we have understood that there are three countries with three different motions with, three different topics, right? And we have to decide only one using the majority vote. The question is that when the voting starts, Indonesia gets 17 yeses. When the voting starts, Indonesia gets 17 yeses. So Malaysia gets 10 yeses. And Singapore gets 15 yeses, or maybe we just make it 25 yeses. Out of total 30, out of the total of 30. The question is, since we can only accept one motion, which country's motion is decided for this session? Is it the country of Indonesia, the country of Malaysia, or the country of Singapore? Now you have to choose either Indonesia, either Malaysia, or either Singapore. Now I want you to answer the question by using the Zoom chat box. So just answer Malaysia, Indonesia, or Singapore. Remember that we are using the majority vote. Okay, majority vote. There are three motions on the floor. Can only choose one, right? Only one motion decided. And based on the rules, which one is the one that will be accepted? Okay, you can just start answering on the Zoom chat box using the motion answer, either Indonesia. Okay, we're already receiving answers. Some says Indonesia, some says Singapore. Other also says that it's Malaysia. Okay, so it's diverged, right? Okay, I'll wait for more 10 more seconds for anyone who wants to add on the question, on the answer. 10 seconds. So feel free for anyone to answer the question. Okay, so we receive quite an answer, quite an amount of answers. They're Indonesia, Singapore. Okay, so it's not a uniform answer. Okay, some says Indonesia, some says Malaysia, some says Singapore. Now we will try to analyze the question, right? And then we will get to the answer. Again, bear with me that there's only one motion to be chosen, but there are already 3 motions on the floor. So we have to analyze which one passes and which one fails, since only one motion is decided. Now let's take a look at Indonesia. Indonesia gets 17 yeses, and Indonesia is the first country that proposes the motion. Let's say on the majority vote. The majority vote says that there should be the same number or the minimum number of 16 for a motion to pass. Now see that 17 is higher than 16, right? Which means that 17 is more than 16. And Indonesia proposes the motion the first time. So in simple rules, it can be decided that Indonesia is the one whose motion is decided. Okay, so the answer is Indonesia. But before we finalize Indonesia, let's take a look at Malaysia. Malaysia here only gets 10 yeses, which means that it is lesser than 16, right? It's lower than 16. If it is lower than 16, then this will not pass. Okay, this will not pass. I will give a red color. But let's take a look at Singapore. Singapore proposes the motion of lockdown, and it gets 25 yeses. Is it then going to be Singapore whose motion is decided, or do we stick with Indonesia? This is one of the tricky question where every batch, sometimes struggle with answering it, but Singapore's answer is not the one. So Singapore is not going to pass, even though it gets 25 yeses. Why would that be the answer? So here's the thing. If Indonesia gets 17, right? And Indonesia is the first country to propose a motion, then the other 2 countries will not be voted. Okay, so this is just a trap that I put on the question. So when Indonesia already gets majority vote and Indonesia is the first one, then Malaysia and Singapore will not be voted. So those numbers 17 and 25, those are just traps, to the question. So for those who vote Indonesia, congratulations, that's correct. But for those who answer Malaysia and Singapore, it's also okay, because we're still learning here, and it's okay for us to make a false answer, because I did the exact same thing when I first was in your position. So the answer is Indonesia. The rules for this is just first that you have to know is that find the one above majority vote. The second one is that find the one with the first cube, or maybe find the one with the the earliest cube. So that's the tip for us to decide. So for example, if there's another question, let's say again, not 1, 2, 3, we have, for example, Kenya, we have Laos, and we have Australia. Let's say Kenya gets 14, Laos gets 18, Australia gets 30. So if a question like this comes up again in any kind of opportunity that you might be participating, remember that Kenya only gets 14, which means that Kenya will not pass. Kenya's motion will not pass, even though Kenya is the first one that proposes. Laos in this case already reaches 16. It reaches 18, which is more than 16. And there's no country after Laos who fulfills all the 2 requirements, which means that Laos will be decided as the winner. The motion by Laos will be chosen and will be discussed. How about Australia? Australia gets 30 yeses here, just more than 18. Again, this is a trap question, right? If Laos is already decided, then Australia will not be voted. So in naturally speaking, we will not be voting anything with Australia. Even though, let's say Australia, if it were to be voted, it will get, let's say, 30 yeses. But once Lao is decided as the motion that is chosen, then Australia will not be voted. It will be just the we will skip Australia directly. So this is just a trap question. Okay, so that's the simple rules of moderated caucus using majority vote. Now, quorum vote, we'll move on to the next material. Quorum vote is basically the higher number than majority, and it's used for us to vote a resolution. So since resolution is the final document, right? It's the final document that is discussed. It will contain all the summary of the debates which have been occurring for the past 2 days, 3 days, depending on the MUN organizer. This will, this will be a formal document that is going to affect the whole countries, right? Whether you disagree or not. So since that situation is at stake, we have to use a higher threshold, right? Because 16 is not seen as a now. We have to look for higher numbers than 16. In this case, we're using quorum vote. So quorum vote is the total number is 30 times 2 divided by 3. The answer is 20. So for a resolution to pass, we have to reach a minimum number of 20. So that's the same rules. Again, that's the same. We have to find the one. So I'm just gonna copy here. We have to find the one above quorum vote. Above or the same. Above or the same. Same one with this one. Above or the same. Now, once you find the one above or the same as the quorum vote, you have to find the one with the earliest queue, right? Find the one that find a country that does not have another country succeeding or subsequently staying in front of them when it comes to fulfilling the requirements. Make sure that no country before us, before our country, that already fulfills all the requirements. Okay, so that's the exact same regulation, the exact same rules for us to decide the draft resolution. In this case, again, the same rules apply. Only one DR decided. So we only have one DR to be decided, but maybe we have more than one DR. I'm going to use another simulation question for all of you guys. So I hope you guys are not bored with the simulation, but I'll say this one is more challenging. So there are 4 DR. DR1, DR2, DR3, DR4. DR1 is the proposed by India, etc., et al., India and others, and then USA and others. DR3 is submitted by China and others. The last one is is submitted by UK and others. So the number minimum majority quorum vote is 20, right? This is the rules, 2 rules. Now we have to decide. There are 4 DRs. Which DR is going to be decided as the final draft resolution, and which one will be decided as the binding resolution for all the member states. Okay, so India gets 19 yes, 1 abstain. No. So remember, in draft resolution, there is an option for us to choose abstain. Okay, so don't panic when you see a delegate using their abstain option, because it is possible for us to choose abstain during a draft resolution voting. Now, India get 19 yes with 1 abstain. USA gets 20 yes and 10 no. China gets 29 yeses with 1 abstain, while UK gets 29 yeses, 1 no. Now, now I want you to again answer the same exact question regarding this simulation. So we have 4 draft resolutions from India, from United States, from China, and from United Kingdom, with the following each summary of the voting results. With India 19 yeses, 1 abstain, 10 no. USA with 20 yeses and 10 no. China with 29 yeses and 1 abstain, while UK has 29 yeses and 1 no. Now I want you guys to choose which DR passes. Is it DR1? Is it DR2? Is it DR3? Or is it DR4? You can answer it through the Zoom chat box. You can either says DR1, DR2, DR3, or DR4. Okay, since this one is probably more complicated, I'm gonna give 1 minute for all of you guys to think. And if you already have the answer, you can just type it right away through the Zoom chat box. Okay, we already have answers from Kanping. She says DR2. Kanza says DR3. Zilda and Deandra say DR3 too. Anyone? Okay, I'll wait for others. Remember that just find anyone who already meets the quorum vote, which is 20, same with 20 or more than 20, and find the one with the earliest queue. The key indicator is the earliest queue. Which country proposes first? Okay, which country proposes the first time? Okay, if this country does not propose the first time, but this country is the one that is chosen because no country is before them that already fulfills the rules and regulations to choose the motion. Okay, so it's kind of complicated, but basically 2 rules, just to find the one that is above the quorum vote, or the same with quorum vote. Second one is to find the one with the earliest queue. All right. Okay, I'll wait for, let's say, 10 more seconds, 15 more seconds. All right. 10, 9, 8, nobody's going to answer more. 7, 6, 5. Anyone wants to change their answer? 3, 2, 1. Okay, it's finalized. Okay. No one can change their answer. Okay. Okay, don't panic. This is just a quiz, right? We're not punishing you if you get it wrong. Okay, let's see from the answer. Okay, some says DR2, others says DR3. Okay, so I only see 2 answers, right? It's either DR2 or DR3. All right. Okay, okay, Larissa, understood. Okay, so okay, let's analyze. Nobody's answering, nobody's changing their answer. So it's fixed, yeah. It's either DR2 or DR3. Okay, now we will analyze first. So remember that the majority vote from this session is 20, right? Majority, wait, quorum vote. Okay, I'm just gonna manually type it. Quorum minimum 20. Let's see DR India. DR India only has 19 yeses, but it has 1 abstain. When you calculate 19 plus 1, it's 20. So does India count? Does India's motion pass? Because 19 plus 1 is 20. So knowing that, we have to ask a question. Does the minimum 20 here indicate that it's a combination of a yes and abstain? Or does the 20 here only indicate the yeses only and not the abstain one? We're not including the no because this is 20, 20 votes of agreeing to something. But does abstain count on this 20 calculation? Well, the answer is no. So we only search for, okay, we only search for 20 yes. The same goes with majority. Okay, oh wait, majority you cannot You cannot be abstain, so it's basically just the one that is yes. Okay, it's the same. So quorum, for quorum case, since some countries can choose to be abstain, then the quorum only indicates 20 only for the yeses. So if India gets 19 yeses, right, and one abstain, it does not meet this requirement. It does not fulfill the 20 yes requirement because India only gets 19, right? So automatically DR1 does not pass. Now let's see with DR2 from USA. USA gets 20 yeses, which fulfills the first requirement, right? You only need to find the one that is above or the same with the minimum. USA's motion gets 20, and 20 is the same as the quorum vote. So it fulfills the first requirement. But does USA fulfill the second requirement, which is to find the one with the earliest queue? If we take a look at the list, right, the first queue is India, right, DR1. But India fails to pass the motion. If India fails to pass the motion, then the first one, the first queue, will move on, will pass to the United States, right? So knowing that the United States is the exact country after India, the immediate country after India, and no country is before USA other than India, whose motion is already, debunked. So it can be said that United States motion is the one that's chosen, right? So knowing that USA fulfills two requirements and no country is before the United States that already fulfills the requirements, then the R2 is the one that is chosen. And the R2 will be decided as the final and binding resolution for all the member states there. Okay, even for those who do not agree with the United States, even those who vote 10 no's for United States. So this is the concept of voting. But sir, China gets 29 yeses, which is more than 20. Why don't we just choose China? China gets more yeses than United States, which means that China's resolution is more liked, is more, it's the favorite one in the council. Why don't we choose China's motion, sir? Well, the answer is, again, this is a trap question, right? Once USA fulfills the two requirements, the last remaining draft resolutions will not be voted. Even though if it were to be voted, it might get higher number, yes. But once USA fulfills the two requirements, then the last or the next draft resolutions will not be voted. So this is basically is just a trap question. Okay. So this will not be voted. The R2 will automatically declared as the past draft resolution. Okay. Okay. Any questions so far regarding this? Because I also personally feel this one is very complicated. So if anyone wants to ask a question, since we already have 15 minutes left, feel free to ask the question right away. I'll wait for 20 seconds. 20 seconds. I'll wait for 20 seconds. You guys can ask me the question. Okay, I see one here. Let's see. Okay, from Zelda. Since the queue is so important to decide, who will be deciding the country? Okay, this is a really good question. The answer is the chair. So the chair will decide the queue based on who submits the first. So the chair will open the submission of draft resolution, right? So anyone who gives an email to the chair first, then automatically that country or that group of country will be declared as the first queue. Anyone or any country who submits after this country will be declared as the second queue, and so on and so forth. But sir, can we reorder? Yeah, let's say our countries are declared as the fourth draft resolution, but we want to be declared as number one. We want to be declared as the first. Can we do that? The answer is yes. It's called motion to reorder. So this is a motion where you can propose to the chair that you want to reorder the draft resolution. For example, you want to reorder USA to be number 1, and then India to be number 2. So DR USA becomes DR number 1, India becomes DR number 2. Is it possible? The answer is yes. But you need to meet the majority vote. You have to have a vote minimum of 50% plus 1. If I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong. If you don't pass that minimum requirement, then your motion will not be entertained. It will not be granted, right? And the chair will stick with this one instead of this one. Okay, so back to Zilda's question. Who will decide the country queue? The answer will be the chair or the jury, right? But in MUN we call them as chairs, the one that moderate the debate. They will decide which one goes first or which DR is named as DR1, and so on and so forth. Okay, if there's no more question, I will move on to the last part of the presentation, just this one. Oh, okay, I see one. Okay, from campaign. Must every country propose a motion or draft resolution since there's an order? No, the answer is no, because this is only a representative. So USA might be grouping with USA, Cambodia, Indonesia, Kenya, but the sponsor, the leader here is USA. So the chair will only name the DR based on this, on the main sponsor of the draft resolution. So draft resolution is decided or is made by a group of countries. It can be a total number of 5, it can be 10 countries, it can be 15 countries. Depends on how well you can communicate with others, how well you can mingle with others. You know, if you are really good at inviting others to join your draft resolution team, then congratulations, you have a big team. But if you only talk with certain countries only, then you will have a small number of countries. Kabdur, which one is recommended? Do we have to stick with the big team or do we have to just stick with the small one? Well, the answer depends on your country's position, right? If your country teams up with the United States and United States team is big, then you have to be with the big team. But if you are Indonesia, for example, and you don't really have the same point of view with the United States, you disagree with certain things, but you feel that you feel closer with this country, then you have to choose with this team, even though it's small team. Because remember that MUN is about politics, right? You have to choose exactly the one that reflects your country's point of view. If you join a big team for the sake of, I just want to be with a big team, but in reality, your country will not be teaming up with this country, then you will not be, you will not be seen as a good performer by the chairs. So make sure to know all of your country stands, know your enemies, know your allies, know which countries to be approached and all that. It will decide the way you will choose your team, right? Okay, another question from I. But the minimum requirement majority vote or quorum is not constant number, right? Can we check? Yes, the answer is yes. So for this case it's 30 delegates with quorum is 20. All right, this is 16. Now, it's not always 30, right? So we have 4 sessions, for example, in MUN. The first 3 sessions, it is participated by a total of 30 countries. But sometimes in the 4th session, some delegates might not be able to come. Some delegates might not be able to participate, maybe because they were sick, or maybe they decide to go home, or maybe they have other businesses. So it can be 29, it can be 28. So when it is 28, for example, the 4th session is 28, even though the last 3 sessions is 30, then we have to stick with number 28, which means that it will change from 16 to 15 yes, and from 20 to, okay, let me count. So 2 times 28 divided by 3. It will be 19, right? So from 16 to 15 for majority, and from 20 to 19 for quorum. It will change based on the present delegates, based on the delegates who are participating at the time. So thank you, Ice, for the question. It's a really good question. So this is a constant number. It will not be the same number from the very first start, right? It will depend on the total number, which might change anytime, right? Okay, it's a really good question. Okay, I'll move on to the last one since we only have several minutes left. So this is moderated caucus. Remember, moderated caucus is motion, right? So this is the same as the one on this one, moderated caucus on this one. So there will be 3 countries in every opportunity, in every chance, whenever a moderated caucus is open, every 3 country can propose, but there will only be 1 country to be decided. So let's say this is session 1. So the chair is opening for motions, right? We have, again, we're just going to use the same countries: Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore. Now, Indonesia proposes a motion, let's say a motion to talk about, right, this is the total time, right? Speaking time, the motion, and this is the topic. Oh, all right, this is the motion, and this one is the status. So we're just gonna erase this column, entire column. All right, now, Indonesia wants to propose a motion, again, vaccination, right? Vaccination. And when the vaccination is decided as Indonesia's motion, Indonesia proposes to have a total time of 10, with speaking time 1 minute for each delegate. So the calculation is there will be 10 countries, right? I'm just gonna add another one here. Now the votes, Indonesia gets, okay, we're just gonna assume it passes, right? Gonna assume it passes. It passes. Now Malaysia has, for example, 5 minutes total time, with 2 minutes speaking time each to talk about health protocols, which means that, okay, I'm just gonna skip the vote first. And then Singapore, for example, proposes to talk about, let's say, lockdown, right? Lockdown. It just needs some minutes for me to think that way. Okay, Singapore proposes 15 minutes with speaking time, let's say 2 minutes, right? So Indonesia proposes 10 minutes total, 1 country, 1 minute, which means that there will be 10 countries, right? So I want you guys to answer regarding the stats. Which motion is decided as the chosen one based on this requirement, right? So you can only have a maximum total time is 20 minutes. And for speaking time, the maximum is 120, right? Oh, and okay, let's say this one is unmoderated caucus. Okay, so I want you to choose which motion fulfills all the requirements for a moderated caucus. Is it the motion coming from Indonesia, or is it Malaysia, or is it Singapore? Using the requirements here. I know it's kind of tricky, but try your best to answer it as accurate as possible. So is it Indonesia, Malaysia, or Singapore? And don't worry, this is the last quiz. There will be no more quizzes after this. So you can just answer, it's either Indonesia. Is it either Indonesia, Malaysia, or Singapore? Okay, Jovita already answers Indonesia. Anyone wants to propose another answer? Okay, I see Nismat already answers Indonesia as well. Zilda, Indonesia as well. Anyone? Feel free to answer the question. All right, I see that it's already sufficient amount of people who already answered the question. I see Indonesia, I see Malaysia as well. Nobody's answering Singapore. Okay, okay. Let's analyze one by one, right? Indonesia, total time, 10 minutes. Does this violate this one? No, because the maximum one is 20 minutes. So this one is fine. Speaking time, 1 minute. Does this violate this one? No, because the maximum one is 120 seconds, or basically this is the same thing as 2 minutes. Since Indonesia only proposes 1 minute, it does not violate the requirement. Motion vaccination, well, you can just choose basically anything. So these 3 motions considered as accurate. The calculation is 10 countries. The status is yes, Indonesia is chosen. But only if if Indonesia passes the majority and the earliest queue. Okay, but for this question, I will just assume that all motions fulfill the voting requirement, but we will just analyze using the requirement on the motion. Okay, so we will only limit that. Malaysia, let's see with Malaysia. It proposes 5 minutes total time. It does not violate this one, right? Because the maximum one is 20 minutes, so it's okay. And then speaking time is 2 minutes. 2 minutes is the same maximum as this one, which means that it does not violate the requirement, right? So it passes. But the answer is, the question is, can 5 be divided with 2? The answer will be 2.5, right? You cannot have 2.5 countries speaking. Right? You cannot just split one country into 2 and make it into 2.5. So this will not make Malaysia's motion to pass, even though the first two, the first total and speaking time, fulfill the requirement. But since the time cannot be divided into a number that is exact, then this motion will not pass. So there will be 3 rules. You have this one. I actually intend to hide this one because I want to see whether you can understand this from the motions perspective. So we have 3 requirements for this one. The previous one only has 2, right? The only has this one. This one. Only 2 requirements, right? But for this case, we have 3 requirements. The third one is make sure that the total time divided by the speaking time results not in decimal numbers. So make sure it does not have a point after that. So make sure it's not 2.5, make sure it's not 2.7, make sure that the numbers are exact. It's either 1, either 2, either 3, either 4, either 5. Make sure that it can be counted. Okay. Let's see with Singapore. Singapore proposes an unmoderated caucus, which means that we have to follow this one, right? 15 minutes total time. Does this violate this one? The answer is no, because the maximum is 20. Right? So this one is fine. But the speaking time, we do not see a speaking time here, right? So remember that in unmoderated caucus, we don't need to use a speaking time calculation. So you can just basically say for a total time of 15 minutes and that's it, right? A total time of 10 minutes and that's it. So this one is red. This one is 2. You don't need to propose a motion on an unmoderated caucus. So you only need to say 15 minutes total time. So this one will not be chosen because it violates the requirement. Right? So that's the simulation of MUN. That's how MUN voting technicals are used. And this is how you calculate the number as well. Okay. So I hope it is understandable in the easiest way possible. If you have any question after this, you feel free to personally chat me on WhatsApp, or you want to ask in the group. Make sure you mention me so that I don't miss your question. And if you want the document, if you want the file, I will give it to you on the WhatsApp group and on the link drive as well. The recorded Zoom will be shared later after this. Oh, and make sure to screenshot the screen now, right? Because you will have to, fill the form, right? The presence form using the screenshot image. Make sure to screenshot it now, because if not, you will be considered as not present during the class, right? Okay, so that will be all from me. Any question before I close the session for our third class? Any question? Okay, I don't see any questions so far. And that will be all for today. So for the next information, for those of you who still wants to do the homework, the research homework or the position paper homework, feel free to submit it to me at any time before the class finishes. And we will have our last class. So sad. We have our last class next week on Saturday again, or maybe Sunday. It depends on my availability. It will be voted again on Thursday, right? I will inform you the available dates. You can vote on that later. And after that, we will decide the date of the last class. And after that, we will participate in the last class, and that's it. You will not see me again after that. But let's pray we will meet each other again at other opportunities. But for MUN School, the last class will be next week, and we will talk about draft resolution. Okay, so that will be all from me. Thank you guys, and have a nice weekend. Bye bye. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.